Hey, future bestsellers, Lisa Daly here. Vanessa Vale is turning authors into millionaires. Do you want to know how? Let's find out. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Vanessa Vale today, and I am super excited to have you on because I got a sneak peek at your brand new course, which is the Thrifty Tips for Authors, the brick by brick strategy to seven figures, which is like, I mean, there's so many, there's so much great information in this course. And I was completely blown away by so many aspects of it. So before I start on my, fangirling, I'd like to talk a little bit about who you are, how you came to start this Thrifty Tips for Authors Facebook group, how this developed into a course. So let's start with who you are. And I think a lot of people already know you because you are a very well established cowboy romance author. How many books have you written so far?
About 80.
80. Oh my God. You're like I'm aspiring to be you when I grow up, if that ever happens. 80 is insane. How fast are you writing? Like, how many
I
books do you put out a
write
year?
I write between 7 and 9.
That's great. That's amazing. I'm so impressed with that. So let's talk a little bit about this Thrifty Tips for Authors course. I love this name because a lot of times when we think about promotion, you think about how much money it costs, right? I mean, I remember when my first novel was published with Penguin, 15 Minutes of Shame, I literally spent my entire advance, which was a pretty decent sized advance. I literally spent the entire thing on promotion. How dumb, did I say that? How dumb was that?
It's not dumb. It's not dumb at all. My class really doesn't talk that much about paid promotions at all because
Right.
they're paid. So I found ways to build an author brand strategy that's based off of no cost.
I,
Um, so it's different than promotions as much as building this brand that's
brand.
yours, right? Really, a brand that's yours that's built on things that are enduring and strong, can handle the whims of the publishing industry. As I think we all know, things shift so quickly
Right.
or pivot, right? If those who watch Friends know, pivot. And so it's important to be able to do so without having to either start over again or lose a lot of money because that was the only thing you had going on.
Right.
Um, and so I think it's important to build strategies and a brand that is all encompassing and enduring so that you can add promotions on top.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you just mentioned losing something where everything changes, and that is actually what happened to you, right? Isn't that's what happened, and you were inspired to start thinking differently about your author branding. So what happened? What was the big disaster in your publishing career that set you
Right.
on this
Well,
different path?
right. I'm not that much different than many people. I had my Facebook ad account shut down. I wasn't using it as the basis for my promotions, but it was a big part of it, or I tried it to be.
Right.
And when it was shut down, they shut it down for a whim. Who knows what I did or said or posted? But they wouldn't put it back up. And without it, there were no paid promotion opportunities through Facebook. And so I had to think of other things. And it was sort of eye opening in that I was relying on those kinds of paid tools, and I recognized weaknesses that I had. Actually, what happened is that because of that, the holes that I had in my brand strategy were very apparent.
So
Um,
So you are the branding queen. You really are the author branding queen. So, I was about to tell you this story before we went on, and I'll actually tell you this now. I spent the entire weekend down a Vanessa Vale rabbit hole because I'm in the process of redoing my website. I'm going to be launching a new series, and you have a really great piece of advice about making your brand really consistent across across your books, across every channel, all this stuff. And I thought, like, this is a really good time to kind of do a full-on overhaul. But I and one of the things that you talked about in the course was this idea of branding your author name so that across all your books everything is the same. And mine are all over the place. I wrote standalones for a long time. I'm doing my first series. And so I thought, I really need to do that. And so I went back yesterday to to the cover designer for a cover that's already been done for months, because I thought, this is the first book in a series. I need to start implementing all this stuff now. I sent like messages out to my social media folks and my, like, everybody, like, this is what we're doing. And that was all because of you and this amazing course. So what's your background? How did you become Vanessa Vale, author branding queen? How did that happen?
Right. There's two different answers to that. The branding portion is I went to art school for college. My background is in graphic design. I wanted to be an artist since I was in first grade and won a poster contest for the physical fitness contest back in first grade. And so I went to art school for college. I love to paint and draw, and I have a degree in coloring within the lines. So after that, I spent 20 plus years doing graphic design professionally. And it was not really branding for like a product like being an author is. However, it was definitely making sure that things look cohesive and organized. So when it is time to brand Vanessa Vale or any author brand, there's specific things that readers or consumers find really valuable. One of them is comfort and familiarity. Readers, or if I go across the country on a road trip and I'm going down the highway and I see restaurants that I recognize, yes, I've eaten there before, but the signs are familiar to me just by looking at the fonts and logo usage. I don't need to speak or read English to recognize them. Like the Olympics logo, for example, no one needs to speak a specific language to recognize that's the Olympics logo.
Right. So or McDonald's even.
Exactly. So there's a comfort factor in that. Like, oh, I recognize this. I know what I get from it. I'm going to go back because I know I'm going to get a good value, a good deal, or I love that book. I love that product, whatever it is, there's comfort in it and familiarity. So when I drive across the country or across town, there's got to be, a Target every 4 miles. But if I see that bullseye, for those of you in the United States, you know what you're getting when you go there.
Right.
And so that familiarity and consistency is what we all crave. Deep down, it's subconscious. And so for readers, as for an author, I want to make sure that when a reader sees my look and my brand, that one, they know what they're going to get. I give it to them consistently, and it looks the same so that they know, they're sure and confident that it is really me when they make the purchase.
Right.
And that starts with that author logo or font usage on book covers.
And you've ridden this strategy all the way to the bank, which I think is so. There's nothing in your Thrifty Tips for Authors Facebook group or in the course which is so jam-packed with information. Like I think it'll probably take you. It's not a super, super long course, but it's so dense with amazing information. And I think it's one of those things where even after you go through the course, ideas will kind of continue to bubble up in your head about things that you can do for your own branding and your own career. You're very well known for the box method. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how that got you to 7 figures a year?
Okay, you'll have to prompt me back to these questions again. I always get on a tangent and forget them. But the concept of the box method is just tracking where you have your books published and the different versions of it. There's nothing truly monumental about it. I could say I came up with the concept, but the true meat of it isn't anything new or remarkable. But when I was starting to publish a lot of books in a lot of different formats on a lot of different retailers in a lot of different languages, I was starting to get overwhelmed. I couldn't keep track of where I published my books. Sometimes when you're publishing across 5, 7, 10 retailers at a time, you skip one without even realizing it. And then 2 months goes by and you're like, wait a second, I never published this book to Apple. How did that happen?
Right.
And so I was starting to fill in a box every time I put up a book. So if I have a new release, I would fill in the box on Amazon, and then I would fill in the box in Apple, and so on across all the retailers I publish to. That includes audio, paperbacks, box sets, large print, everything else that you can think of to do. And so The box was the spread. It was just a spreadsheet, a simple spreadsheet. There was no formulas. It was nothing. It was just the colors in each box for each book. And so then when you look at it, it's just a bunch of boxes that are colored in. But
Right.
behind the scenes, it really is a way to think about how many places you can sell and make money from your books.
Well, and I love that idea because the when you're seeing all those colored boxes, what you're also seeing is all the places where you don't have colored boxes. And
Right.
that's basically a map of opportunities. You are seeing like, oh, this book doesn't have an audio edition yet. This book doesn't have, I don't, oh, I forgot to put this book on Kobo. Or if I'm thinking about translations and I go, oh gosh, all my German translations are doing great, but I don't have one for this book over here, or all my French translations. And so it's such a great visual representation of the opportunities that you have in your in your career to make more money. And I love so the first time that we ever met was at NINC,
Mhm.
with Novelist Inc. conference, and I was so blown away by this because you think we all have that stuff going on in our head, but one of the things that you did so effectively that I think translates into the course is you just showed it. You don't have to be a bestseller everywhere, or you don't have to even have like any big books. The thing that was so powerful was this idea that if you just make like $1 a day, but across all these different platforms or retailers, that you can make 7 figures a year just kind of cranking out day by day on your backlist. And that's such a powerful concept, such a powerful concept.
Right. You use the key word in there is backlist. And
Right.
so I'm a backlist writer, which means that, yes, I do have new releases. Obviously, if I publish 7 to 9 books a year, I have 7 to 9 new releases and I want them to go really, really well.
Of course.
However, I'm not a new release writer. I'm a backlist writer because once that book, let's say I release a book today and I publish another one next month, well, this today's book will be my backlist next month. It's not
Right.
my new release anymore. And
Right.
so I want to make sure that I can do as much as I can with my backlist. All my money, almost all of it, comes from my backlist and what I do with it. And so when you do that, you can, one, you can possibly write less because you're doing more with books you've already written. You
Right.
get, which is passive income. You can grow your revenue streams over time as new retailers or new delivery methods become available. And you can add on with different languages. And that
Love that.
grows and grows and grows. And so when you do that, then you grow the number of boxes. But it also allows you to go on vacations and other things because your money is coming from your backlist. So over time, the more it grows and the more books you have, the better chances you have to make money off of your backlist. And a new release is great, but it's not as powerful and sustaining as a backlist is. And I think that concept is a little bit flipped from what most people are striving for today. And
True.
there's nothing wrong with the different viewpoints. It's just a method that I have started to work on slowly and surely over the years, and it has worked and it becomes really, really enduring. So I can go on vacation, I can take a break, I can write less books a year, and all of it will still sustain because I do have a huge backlist.
The fact that you can earn 7 figures a year from your books and take vacations regularly, I think is like the biggest selling point of all.
Right. And
Or
my books and my new releases are not USA Today bestsellers. I'm not selling tens of thousands of books up front. There's so many
right,
amazing authors who did just an amazing job with promoting to get that new release out there.
right.
And so because of that, those guys do an amazing job and I want to learn from them because the more I
Absolutely.
make on the front list, it only helps.
Right.
But I don't make tons and tons of sales on my front list books.
It's
So
all
it's
it's
more
all
like,
backlist.
right, it's more proof that you don't have to. It's okay that you don't.
So what do you think I know you're so analytical, which I think is really incredible because you've really just done such a deep dive into all these different strategies that work. And there are so many strategies in the course that I had never ever seen before. And I don't want to drop them all here, but there's like some really like impressive, mind-blowing kinds of things. What do you think as you're seeing what other authors are doing with their own careers? What do you think is the biggest thing that authors are leaving on the table? Like aside from formats, because we just sort of talked about that a little bit. But in addition to that, you've got all these great thrifty tips. Usually your advice doesn't cost any money or it costs very little money. What do you think is the big opportunity other than being as wide as you can possibly be that authors are leaving on the table?
Two things to start with. One is nobody's doing it wrong. No one's doing it wrong. You're doing it your own special way. No, if you put 10 or 100 authors in a room, every single person's gonna be doing it completely differently.
Right.
It's the same end product. You're publishing amazing books, but everyone does it different. So there's no wrong answer. And I forgot what second one I was going to say.
Let's
but there's like you said something specific, and I wanted to address it, and I forgot now. But I want to say that there's nothing wrong with it. So when you ask me to point out a flaw that people might have, it really isn't a flaw. I want to say that it might be something that you're like, oh yeah, I might want to do that. I have them too. I've got a long list of things that I need to fill in that I'm not that great at as well. So I'm not saying I'm the expert by any means, but I do have lots of concepts. And I think one of them that people don't recognize or understand about their newsletter list is that it is the only thing that an author owns. Those
Right.
email addresses that readers sign up with for you,
Yeah.
you technically own. They chose you, they gave you the email address, it is now yours.
Yeah.
So that is a tool to reach that specific person. The more people you have on your list, the more direct access you have to people who chose you, whether they're organic or inorganic. So don't disregard the low and slow behind the scenes need to grow your newsletter list and then obviously employing it. But I just bring up suggestions on ways to grow it. I'm not the expert on deploying those emails. There's so many great books and classes on that itself. And I don't
Mhm.
go over this is how you should send out your emails. I
Right.
come up with suggestions on how to grow your list because the bigger it is, the more people who chose you, you can reach them directly.
Right. And I think that really is such a key. So and the idea about reaching out to people regularly and also having such consistency in your branding and your books all across the board, those out outreach efforts are more powerful if they feel like, "Oh, I've seen that before," or, "Oh, I
Right.
like her."
Because if
So
you think about the newsletter, it's in the middle, right? So people are coming into your newsletter from somewhere. It could be a back of a book. So you have to work on your back matter. It could be a reader magnet. So you need to have a strong reader magnet. It could be they just heard about you and went to your website and
right.
signed up. So I just named 3 or 4 things right there that's on the front side of your newsletter that you have to have strong. On the other side, going out from your newsletter is that you have to share the things that people go to from your newsletter. And those could be your books, it could be your website, it could be bonus content, it could be all these different things. So the things on both sides of your newsletter can be free and easy or fairly easy to make and employ for your author brand strategy. But you have all these things that go this way and this way that come in and go out both directions, and they all tie together. And if they all look the same, again, you have those readers who are looking for consistency and familiarity. If they
Mhm.
come in from your Facebook group and they're going to your website and then going into your newsletter, they want to know they go one to the other, and it really is you. And then once they sign up and they get your emails, they still want to know that they're getting something that's you.
That's phenomenal. I think that there's never I have as much, and I came from advertising, so I certainly know plenty about branding, but that the way that you have described it about the readers feeling comfort and wanting to know that they're going to get the thing that they like over and over and over again, I think that that is the best argument for branding, specifically for author branding, because authors often tend to think of something as like an add-on, like, "Oh, when I hit it big, then I'll do like a big branding thing." And they don't realize that that is a really strong, stepping stone to
Right. It's
everything else.
important to think of it's important to think of it from the start when you only have none or one or two or a few
Right.
books, because if you do it early on, you save yourself so much time and energy. That's
Right.
part one of it. Part two is you're going to look like a rock star from the start. If you aren't there and if you haven't if you're far along in your author career and all of a sudden you're like, oh well shoot, I probably need to make some changes, then that's great because you've got lots of opportunities to do it. Yes, it's going to take a little bit more rework, but it's a great opportunity. So when people ask me, if I'm a new author, is my class okay? Or if I'm a well-established author, is my class okay? It works for either. It just depends on when you want to employ it into your author strategy.
Well, I will tell you, I spent like the entire weekend employing it into my author strategy. So there, and the funny thing is, I actually get compliments on my branding on a regular basis, but there are pieces that I have neglected, or they're kind of the same, but they're not. This is a little different, and this is a little different. And I just thought, like, I was so impacted by your course. I just thought I need to like make this consistent all across the board. So there are lots of folks who are, I'm sure, fans of your Thrifty Tips for Authors Facebook group. And there's so much great advice in there. But what is it that makes the course so powerful? Like, what is it you're getting out of and you're like, what? Thank you. But it's different, right? I've been in the Facebook group, and
you're the only person who's seen the course.
I feel so honored. But there's so much good information in the Facebook group, and for sure everybody should should join that, because there's just, again, stuff that does not cost you any money, but that can have a dramatic impact over time. And this is what I think of whenever I think of your strategies. I always think about compound interest and how if you start early, even if you start small, you'll have a lot more money saved by the end of your career than if you throw in a bunch starting, at the midpoint or starting at the end. And that's because of the power of compound interest over time. And I feel like your branding strategies are the same, that they're these sort of small things that you can do, although some of them are big, but some of these small things that end up making this monumental difference in your career. And we have a mutual friend, and I will not name her, but I do know that she wrote you a very nice, glowing endorsement. And she said to me actually it was at that same NINC conference where we first met. I came out of there, and you know how it is at a conference, everybody's like, ooh, whose panel did you like, or what did you, and we're all chit-chatting about what we liked. And I was just like blown away by your presentation. And our friend said, like, oh, well, this is like following her strategy is the reason that I went from 6 to 7 figures this year. And that's so impressive. You are making millionaires with your strategies.
Well, and the thing is that the strategies aren't anything new or inventive. I don't say, do this,
totally
and this will happen.
I totally disagree.
But well, I think what's important. Those two things. One is the beginning of my 50 Tips for Authors Facebook group. I put up a video of an Australian sports TV broadcast, and I want to move to Australia just because these are amazing sports broadcasts. It was of a turtle and a hare race. There was a turtle, tortoise, whatever, and a rabbit. And they were in this little course. This is real. And they were scooting along. And I'm not going to spoil who won the race because I just don't want to. But I think based off of what you were just saying is that these little bits and pieces, they add up. And it is a slow grow. And over time, these little, I'll say gems, as you probably call them, can really make a big difference, because you don't have to have this huge bang. You just have to like subtly apply little things to go into it. But back to your question, how do these concepts really sort of work? It's because they're concepts. They're a way to think about what you're doing, not just your website. It's not just social media. It's not just the look of your books. It's the words of your books, the look of your books, how you're publishing your books, where you're publishing your books. All these little things have concepts to consider and to think about. Now, I think that after 2 years of having the Facebook group in place, I've been collecting a lot of comments and feedback about my posts. And one thing I have to say is that not every concept is ready for someone right at this moment.
Sure.
So in the class or whatever, you may look at it and be like, that's not for me right now. That's okay. pause and sit on it and stew on it, but you've got it in your head because all of a sudden in 2 months or 2 years, you'll be like, oh, I totally get it. I am ready for this now. And it completely makes sense. And so what's really important is that you are open in general to new ideas, like we all should be, but to concepts that are so actually cockeyed that you have to pause and think twice and look again. I think, Lisa, you did that.
I did.
When we were looking at the class, you're like, what? Wait, no. Oh, no. Oh, and you had this sort of slow to grow epiphany on it because they really are, they're not, a lot of them aren't really tangible. And then they become tangible when you apply the concept to your everyday author strategy. And I know that sounds ridiculously vague to anyone who doesn't have the idea of what we're talking about. But yeah, there's this little bit of, I don't know. Meat and potatoes, like these little meaty little nuggets of things that are surprising. You're like, oh, I never thought about that. And it's not like I all of a sudden like, oh, I know all this. What happened is I didn't have a way to promote, and I started thinking about everything in a different way.
Right.
There was a concept where I mentioned in my Facebook group about I was in the bacon aisle at the grocery store. I think everyone's well aware, I'm sure all around the world, but at least in America, food's getting very expensive.
Right.
But they're also trimming the size of the packages. And so instead of having a pound of bacon, there's only 12 ounces of bacon. So they cut 25% of the bacon out of the package. It looks exactly the same. But that gave me an amazing epiphany about my book writing. And so if you want to know more, you might have to get the class. So there's a concept behind the trimming of bacon packaging that I thought about and spun around into the economy of book writing.
I love that. And the thumbnail for this YouTube video definitely is
going to have a piece of bacon now.
Everyone
loves bacon.
Right? So, and there's all this great, the sizzle. The funny thing is that when I think of author courses, right? There's this old advertising adage about the steak and the sizzle. And I think that your course and your Thrifty tips are steak because they are just this kind of solid long-term thinking way to build your career up. And you're right, there are things, and what I love about this is if you screw something up, you haven't sunk a ton of money into it. And I really, it's just about thinking about your career and your branding and your books in a way that's much more strategic, that's going to get you more money from the books you've already written. And I think that's so powerful because how much cash are we leaving on the table because we're not making the most out of all of these assets that we have poured our blood, sweat, and tears into. So I think that's one of the most powerful things about the course. There were some things where, I'm a big newsletter fan, and anybody who watches the channel will be like, oh my gosh, do not get Lisa on a newsletter tangent again, because I'm like, this is the most important thing you need to do. But what I loved about your course is that there were so many things where they weren't massive changes, but they were things that you could make across the board now and then just implement going forward, and that you would again have that power of compounding marketing. We'll just call it that.
Right. So using your example from earlier and your weekend where you implemented a global author,
a global Vanessa Vale weekend.
But you tweaked your author look on your book covers, so that they look the same, or there's a consistency and familiarity behind them. So it's easy to slowly add that into your website header, your social media headers, your email headers, your event banners, your bookmarks, your buttons, your swag, every single bit of things. And I'm not saying you have to do it all at once, but you're like, well, okay, well, today I'm going to change out the website header and just do that one little thing. And it just makes a big difference. Or your email headers. And I know everyone out there is like, well, I can't do graphic design. You went to art school. Well, that's not me. Well, you don't have to.
No.
And so recognizing that you aren't good at something is winning the battle. It's like a He-Man thing, right? I'm not good at my taxes. I definitely don't cut my own hair. And so when you know you should not cut your own hair, and you should see my 10-year-old passport photo where I cut my own bangs, when you once learn, the hard way, which we all learn the hard way, when there's sometimes things you should not do, then you hire someone.
Right.
And when you hire someone, you from the class, you'll learn what to give them and how to give it to them once, or they'll give it to you once, and then you can take it from there and utilize it over and over and over again, which means what? Being thrifty.
Hmm.
So if Lisa, if you had a graphic designer making your font usage for your book covers, then you've got it from him or her one time, and then you have it now, and you can do it for your own Facebook header and your own website header and so on,
Right.
without really any skill on your part.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's exactly right. And I think that there are so many resources now that are inexpensive, like Fiverr and things like that,
Or
that
even
you
Canva, those kinds of programs make it super simple for you to look like a
so
rock star.
so simple, right? They do a lot of the work. All you have to do is type in your name or your words.
Right.
So yeah, I there are kind of ready-made logos. You can just apply your fonts and your colors, and it makes everything beautiful. And yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It's a spectacular and thrifty tool. Um, One of the other things that I think was so helpful was that you did give a lot of great handouts. Like, for example, when we're talking about going to a graphic designer, if you choose to do that, you actually have a list of, that is downloadable. That's like, okay, well, here are the things that you need to consider asking your graphic designer for. And here, you almost give it's like a creative brief is essentially what it is. So that not only are you going to know all of the things that you need to have branded all in one shot, but also the way that you would communicate that to an art director or a graphic artist. And I think this is so important because it's not a thing where you think of as costing you a lot of money. But again, I started my career in advertising. And so I know you come up with a creative brief ahead of time and you work from that. But my good friend Lisa Earl McLeod, who I love to pieces, another author, she doesn't really know what she wants until she sees it. And so she spends about 4 times as much on graphic design as I do because she needs to see those 87 different versions. And I think that it wasn't until I said, you need to do this, like here, write this creative brief before you do the project, so she could think things through ahead of time. It saved her money. And I think that's one of the things that's really cool about what you've done, is that you've provided all this stuff. Well, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited about this course. It launches on April 15th, and it's amazing. You've already got just a ton of interest. People are super, super excited about it. I'm hearing everyone talk about it. When is registration going to close for this?
You've put me on the spot because I've been debating it. I
It's
would
a
just say,
secret.
I know, I would say hurry up and get it before the 15th, because my debate right now is if I'm going to shut it down for the 15th or if I'm going to keep it open for a week after. So you better hustle on it, because I haven't decided which I'm going to do yet. So yeah.
I don't think we want to wait and find out. I think we better get in there quickly and take advantage.
I will say the class lasts about a month, so you get all the content on Saturday the 15th, and you can do it as fast or slow as you want. However, I have 4 weekly
Zoom
uh,
calls.
Zoom StreamYard calls with everyone who attends, and they'll be recorded for those who can't make it. But they're weekly, so it lasts for 4 weeks in that window. But you can take it all on Saturday if you want it.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. So, and then it's cool that you're going to do those live calls. I always find that so helpful when I take a course. And so you're going to be answering questions from everybody in the class. So, the other thing I thought was really cool is that you have a special Facebook group that's outside of the Thrifty Tips group. That's just for the people in the class.
Right. Well, one of the things that's really crucial about being your author brand strategy is networking. And so that's free, completely free,
Right.
or it can be very costly if you don't do it. So the important thing to add on to the class is a place for people to get together who have taken the class, who have the same who've learned the same knowledge and concepts and can work on them together with other people who have taken the class. And so in that group, you can network and meet new to you author friends and get
Love
together
that.
and work. And so for those of you who are introverts like me, it's an extra small space to get out there and practice all the things that are in the class about trying to coordinate with other authors.
Love that. I absolutely love that. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I'm actually going to drop a link to the course in the description below. So if you guys want to find out more about it, you can definitely do that. Vanessa Vale, thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. If you want to write a book you're super proud of and get it published and market the heck out of it, this is the channel for you. And you definitely want to check out Vanessa's class. It is amazing. All right. See you next time.